Get ready to explore the world as we set sail for places far off the beaten path in this exciting Adventures in Travel presentation. Visit some of the most fascinating destinations in the world and take part in activities that are far beyond the ordinary tourist routine. You'll be thrilled as we bike, sail, dive, trek, and climb to really experience the world and its cultures. For an unparalleled vacation, let's join our host, Doug Jones.
Our journey to Alaska begins in the city of Vancouver. Located on the western coast of British Columbia, Vancouver is our point of embarkation. As the sun rises over the mountains of British Columbia, the Island Princess makes her way quietly through Vancouver Harbor. Each summer, thousands of travelers journey to Alaska through the fabled Inside Passage on board luxurious ships such as the Island Princess. Our captain, Christopher Sample, and the deputy captain, Roger Knight, position themselves on the bridge wings as the Island Princess approaches her berth at the Vancouver Pier. Our ship is ending a one-week cruise from Whittier, Alaska. As soon as the lines are tied, 600 passengers will disembark, painters will touch up the hull, new stores will be brought on board, the ship will bunker 1,500 tons of fuel, and a staff of 300 will prepare the ship for another departure the very same day. In the afternoon, we will board along with 600 other passengers on one of the most popular cruises of all time, a journey through Alaska's Inside Passage, then north to the top of the world. There is a sense of excitement here that only a great ship can provide. The luxury, relaxation, and wonder of a grand style of travel that speaks of another age. Well-wishers on the pier extend an excited bon voyage as the lines are thrown and the Island Princess begins another journey north to the 49th state. Our ship sails through the Vancouver Harbor toward the open sea. As we pass under the Stanley Bridge, deckhands bring in the port flags, and another sailing is underway. The Island Princess is one of more than a dozen great ships that make this journey each week in the summer months. She sails out of Vancouver and then heads north along the Canadian coast. Our first stop is the lively town of Ketchikan, the first community of any size that we will encounter in Alaska. The Inside Passage is a natural, protected waterway created by nature. An archipelago of more than 1,000 islands forms a calm, protected passage north along the Alaskan coast. Ketchikan is a busy port, and its harbor fronts the main street of the town. The wood frame houses cling to the hillside above this community, which is still an active center for the fishing trade. Each morning, fishing boats head through the early misty fog to catch the Alaskan king salmon that are Ketchikan's main claim to fame. We dock in the center of a town that has the dubious distinction of being one of the wettest cities in the world. In the center of Ketchikan is a rain gauge that registers almost with a sense of local pride just how much rain the community has endured to date. Here in southeast Alaska, the weatherman has a pretty simple job. If he predicts rain, he stands a good chance of being right. Ketchikan sits in the midst of one of the most beautiful parts of the Inside Passage on a green velvet island. The community developed as a logging center. The timber industry is still active today. Logs are floated down the passage to the sawmill on the outskirts of town. With a population of only 11,000, Ketchikan is still the fourth largest city in the state. At the turn of the century, it was considered a boomtown with 800 settlers, but its history actually goes back thousands of years to the native Tlingit Indians, the original settlers of this land. A young Alaskan of Tlingit bloodlines chops out the center of a rough-hewn log as he prepares to carve a corner post for a ceremonial hall. The Tlingit Indians of southeast Alaska continue their traditions today. and the beautifully hand-carved totems stand as a reminder of a rich and colorful past. The figures on these elaborately carved totem poles represent events, leaders, family, and the history of each clan. They do not, in most cases, represent gods or spirituality, as some people assume. They were created to preserve the stories and history of a people, not as idols of worship. But the most colorful stories in Ketchikan's history come from a rickety walkway built on wooden pilings above the creek that runs through the center of town. This is Creek Street, and it served the lusty needs of the early settlers of the day. This was the center of Ketchikan's bustling prostitution trade. In the isolation of this region, brothels were accepted as an inevitable part of life. Dolly's house is today a museum, perhaps the only museum of its kind in the world. The guides will tell you the history of the home, and after your tour, you may not approve, but you'll have a better understanding of why these businesses were allowed to exist. Dolly was Ketchikan's best-known prostitute. She wasn't a madam, she ran a sole proprietorship, and the house was her home. The decor is quaint, except hanging in the window was the bright red light. When it was on, Dolly was available. When it was off, she was otherwise engaged. Today you can't help but be struck by the simple, homey charm, a far cry from the smoky bordellos of most waterfront towns. Because the simple fact is that many of the men came in just to talk. They were lonely, and Dolly's biggest business was conducted on the parlor sofa and not the upstairs bed. Still, Dolly was no angel, and her business was conducted over a very long period of time. Dolly had a long working career. By the time she retired, she had put on a bit of weight. Her slip is proof that in terms of size, Dolly gave the men their money's worth. Ketchikan is the salmon capital of the world. Each summer, the freshwater streams that run into the Inside Passage offer one of nature's most amazing sights. These salmon have returned to the place of their birth to spawn. It will be the end of their lives and the conclusion of an amazing cycle of nature. Thousands of salmon eggs hatch in these freshwater streams each spring. When mature, the salmon will head downstream into the open sea, going through a physical change that enables them to become saltwater fish. After years at sea, a biological clock tells the salmon to return to their home, by then thousands of miles away. And with a determination seen in few other creatures, swimming against the stream, jumping over rocks and waterfalls, instinct guides these salmon back to the place of their birth, where they spawn and die, completing a cycle of life. Throughout the Inside Passage, fish hatcheries are operated by the state of Alaska. Water ladders divert the returning salmon into the hatchery, where the roe is removed from the females and incubated in a controlled environment before being placed in the streams. By giving nature a helping hand, Alaska has increased the salmon population and made the fishing industry a dependable, important source of employment for Alaskans. At the Silver Lining Cannery in Ketchikan, processing operations employ thousands of extra seasonal workers. During the height of the salmon run, boats arrive one after the other, loaded with their catch. This is a feverishly paced business, not unlike the harvesting of crops. The salmon run occurs for a brief period of time each summer. Once it is over, the business will halt for another year. Each summer, the canneries offer wages that are impressively high in order to attract mostly college students from the lower 48. They come north for the summer, live in Spartan conditions, work in the canneries, and make quite a bit of money in a short period of time. Kings, cohos, and silvers are all processed in these canneries throughout Alaska's southeast. The canneries of Alaska date back to the 19th century, when the first Americans heading north from Seattle saw a great opportunity to capitalize on the bountiful salmon supply. It was a labor-intensive business even then, and the early cannery operators employed Chinese immigrants who came for the sole purpose of working the canneries and then returning home. Few stayed, and today there's little indication of their early presence. Asians in the canneries today are more likely to be people from the lower 48 who have never been to Alaska before. Once the salmon are clean and processed, they are smoked in large ovens to give them a distinctive flavor. The smoked salmon is then packaged and canned, ready for shipment not only to the lower 48, but throughout the world. The fishing industry is monitored and well managed by state conservationists. It is a renewable resource, and the finished product is delicious. Alaskan smoked salmon from the Silver Lining Cannery of Ketchikan. But as good as the canned smoked salmon is, nothing can duplicate the taste of fresh salmon baked on an outdoor grill. Throughout the state, you see signs advertising salmon bakes, an Alaskan tradition, and all-you-can-eat chuck wagon-style dinner featuring the state's prized catch. The aroma is mouth-watering, and the setting in the misty hills of Alaska's southeast makes for a dining experience we'll remember long after we leave the state. Because Ketchikan is on an island, roads are rare. This is the land of the small private plane. Float planes take off and land on runways of water, providing accessibility to a vast and pristine land. Misty Fjords National Monument lies to the east of Ketchikan. It is a wonderland of 2 million protected acres and a paradise for sportsmen and tourists alike. It is accessible only by air. Temsco Aviation of Ketchikan is going to take us into this wilderness region. After circling the mountains, our pilot lands our plane in the middle of a quiet lake. Each day, Temsco flies in fishermen early in the day and returns before sunset to take them out again. The experience is typically Alaskan, quiet, beautiful, and one of many shore excursions available to passengers from ships sailing the Inside Passage. With the gear, the passengers, and the catch aboard, the plane takes off out over the lake, soaring into the sky above the misty fjords of this beautiful land. Back in Ketchikan, we reboard the Island Princess and continue sailing north through the Inside Passage. Piloting this ship through this inland waterway of islands and reefs is a delicate task. Captain Sample watches from the bridge as the Island Princess navigates a particularly complex course. Deputy Captain Knight mans the controls of this 553-foot vessel while monitoring a panel of instruments designed to ensure our safe passage. The wheel itself is maneuvered by a senior crew member who takes direct orders from Captain Sample as he directs the ship port and starboard through the narrow channel. The job of our navigator, Graham Goodway, is very complex in this part of the world. Unlike Mexico, the Mediterranean, and much of the Caribbean, where a ship can steam for hours on one course heading, these waters are far more complex, filled with hidden reefs, rising and falling tides, swift currents, and other navigational hazards that require complex and precise navigation. P&O Lines has maintained one of the best safety records of any shipping line afloat. Tied in with safety is the radio room. It is the chief radio officer's duty to make sure the ship is in constant contact with other vessels nearby and to monitor the ship's exact position. When he isn't busy doing priority ship business, he'll put your personal phone call through. Passengers can call anywhere in the world through the satellite link. All of this and more is a part of the behind-the-scenes world of a luxury liner, whether sailing the high seas or the protected waters of the Alaskan coast. The weather is very changeable in the Inside Passage. While often gray, misty, and wet, it can also be beautifully clear. Warm summer days with bright sunshine reflecting off the calm, peaceful waters are common on part of any cruise north. Our next stop is the capital of Alaska, Juneau, a landlocked city accessible only by sea or by air. Juneau has been the capital of Alaska since 1906. By the time our ship has steamed north into the Gastineau Channel leading to Juneau, the weather has changed. It is gray, misty, foggy ahead. Juneau is perched on a shelf between massive mountains to the east and a deep water channel to the west. Today, the town will host thousands of cruise passengers as 4 different ships tie up or anchor off this remote spot. The Island Princess crew works quickly to make the lines fast. Huge power winches pull the massive hemp lines in the delicate operation required to dock the ship. And today we're greeted by Juneau's mascot, the Alaskan smiling bear, ready to pose for a photo and then send you on your way. The main street of Juneau is a reminder of Alaska's mining days. From the turn of the century until 1944, 3 different mining companies took $158 million in gold from the creeks and valleys around the town. Today, the local economy is split between federal and state payrolls, some fishing, and the cruise ship trade. And the local delicacy is not some exotic creature of the wild, but fudge. The Alaskan Fudge Company on Franklin Street does a booming business when the cruise ships are in. Here, the fudge is made the old-fashioned way, cooked and simmered, then spread out on marble slabs and turned with a huge spatula until it has cooled and set, ready for you to eat. Juneau was built on hills, and the town seems to go straight up. Old wooden homes speak of a time when this was a boom town built on the prosperity of gold. Wooden stairways cover the hills and still provide the primary access down into the center of town. This is a city that will give you a workout. There is no need for an aerobics class here. A simple walk home will do. Juneau is the state capital, and the simplicity of the Capitol building reflects the fact that when it was built, Alaska was a territory, not a state. The governor's mansion is just around the corner. It is elegant and grand, particularly for Alaska. But this is no ordinary state capital. Not only are there no roads in or out, a huge glacier abuts the backside of town. The Mendenhall Glacier is a massive moving wall of ice 12 miles long, extending out of the 1,500-mile-long Juneau ice field. Anyone who comes to Alaska wonders why the glacial ice is blue. The reason is the density of the ice. The ice is so compact, so solid, that it refracts the light, separating and reflecting back the blue, while absorbing all other color wavelengths. The intensity of the blue varies according to the density of the ice. For many cruise passengers, one of Juneau's greatest thrills starts here at Era Helicopters. Each summer, ERA transports thousands of visitors high into the Juneau ice field. For many, it is their first helicopter ride. For almost all, it will be their first walk on a glacier. This is one of the great travel experiences of North America. Moments after takeoff, we are soaring out over one of the largest ice fields on Earth as we enter a land of eternal snow. Our pilot searches for a flat spot away from the deep and dangerous crevasses. We land in an icy rain and set foot onto the glacier, a world far removed from the ship we left behind. Glacial melt pours deep into the dangerous icy tunnels, reflecting a rich indigo blue. As the storm intensifies on the glacier, our pilot loads up and takes off, leaving this desolate, frozen land of wonder far below. The Island Princess sails from Juneau at midnight. The following morning, passengers wake up to clear blue skies as we continue north through the Inside Passage. Cruising to Alaska has become one of the most popular travel experiences of recent years, and the Island Princess is one of many ships making this trip each summer. One of the reasons for the popularity of this journey is the variety of experiences it offers, and the luxury, comfort, and relaxation great ships provide. The Alaska cruise gives you an opportunity to see breathtaking scenery up close, explore interesting towns, and enjoy the company of other travelers. If you enjoy skeet shooting, you'll have an opportunity to practice your skills as the clay pigeons sail out over the Inside Passage. You might like to try your hand on the shuffleboard court. Shuffleboard was first played at sea on P&O ships in the 1870s, and it still fills many ocean hours. Ping pong on the windy decks can provide an interesting challenge. It's not too taxing and a great way to spend part of the afternoon. The Island Princess has a fitness gym where you can bike, lift weights, join aerobics classes, and in general keep fit on your cruise. Physical fitness and regular workouts in the gym are standard features of life at sea today. There are also card games, gin rummy tournaments, and bridge classes each afternoon. And for many passengers, just relaxing with a good book is what life at sea is all about. Cruising offers travelers an opportunity to keep constantly busy or to be totally relaxed. Tea is served each afternoon at 4, another tradition that harks back to the days of the great transatlantic liners when the British ruled the high seas. From Juneau, we steam north to one of Alaska's most amazing attractions, Glacier Bay. This protected bay gives us the chance to see some of the world's greatest tidewater glaciers. This day is one of the highlights of any Alaska cruise. A National Parks ranger boards the ship from a tender and stays with us throughout the day. He answers questions from passengers and offers a running commentary as the ship passes through this amazing waterway. Just 2 centuries ago, this was a solid mass of ice left behind by the Ice Age. A gradual warming trend and the action of earthquakes forced the ice to recede, and the ocean moved in to fill the void. Today, Glacier Bay is 60 miles long. Its shores are lined with 16 major and dozens of minor tidewater glaciers that are all still slowly retreating onto the land. The Indians called it Thunder Bay because of the roaring sound that would echo out after the glaciers would calve massive icebergs into the bay. The captain carefully navigates the Island Princess closer and closer to the Marjorie Glacier. His eyes never leave the glacier's face, for if a large enough iceberg breaks off, he'll have to make a quick retreat. Dwarfed by the size of this mass of ice, the Island Princess journeys right up to the glacier face. Passengers scan the snow-covered wall and listen for the creaking sounds, then point and watch as the glaciers calve into the sea. From Glacier Bay, we head east, then north through the Lynn Canal, a natural channel carved by ice long ago. The Lynn Canal brings us to our next port of call, the scrappy mining community of Skagway, almost unchanged since the gold rush days of 1898. The Island Princess docks downtown at the very end of the Lynn Canal, and we disembark to explore this true frontier town. For about a year and a half, Skagway was one of the busiest towns in the world. This quaint community, complete with false front stores and wooden sidewalks, remains much as it was during the days of the Great Alaskan Gold Rush. In July of 1897, a group of miners, fresh from Dawson City, arrived in San Francisco with 3 tons of gold. News of the discovery electrified the nation, and within weeks, an estimated 100,000 men from San Francisco, Portland, and Seattle boarded ships sailing north. Lawlessness was rampant, there was no attempted order. Prostitution flourished, and the cribs, little wooden huts, individual bordellos, still stand on the old main street. At the turn of the century, they offered services that were strictly illegal but widely used. A modern-day sign over one such crib aptly describes the services offered inside. Gambling flourished, liquor abounded, and the whole rollicking town had a frontier feeling that had long since vanished in the lower 48. On the outskirts of town, the cemetery speaks of shootouts and tragic deaths. Few people here lived long lives. The stakes were high, and the town attracted the misfits of America, seeking their fortunes in the hills that promised gold. This was the town of gold and also the town of steam. The White Pass and Yukon Railroad still operates under the power of steam. The train pulls up next to the Island Princess. So let's board the train and set out on a true journey back in time. The story of this railroad is, of course, the story of gold. Thousands of prospectors had used the Chilkoot Trail and the White Pass Trail to the Klondike fields. The route was torturous, and hundreds of men and thousands of animals died trying to get through the pass in the winter of 1898. A Canadian group set to work to capitalize on the stampede by building one of the most impossible railroads imaginable. 1,000 men went to work in May of 1898 under the direction of a colorful character named Mike Henney. And 14 months later, after enduring sheer hell, the track was laid and the trains began to roll. But almost simultaneously, the gold rush ended, and the miners seeking passage through the pass disappeared. For 7 decades, the railroad struggled along hauling freight. It finally closed down and sat idle for 5 years. Then in 1988, with the second Skagway boom, the cruise ship trade, the railroad was refurbished, the old cars polished up, and the line put back into service to haul visitors to the summit so travelers could relive some of the magic of the Gold Rush days. From the train, we now return to the ship. The Island Princess is preparing to sail south and west toward the open sea. We are leaving the protected waters of the Inside Passage and heading toward the Gulf of Alaska. The serenity of this waterway gives way to the rolling seas as we sail alongside spectacular snow-covered mountains that rise up from the shore. In the night, the waves build as the Island Princess heads west across the Gulf. But the following morning, all is peaceful and calm. The seas are glassy, and crew members open up the ship. During the night, the seas necessitated battening down the bow area by installing heavy metal covers over the large open windows. This morning, these will be removed and stored until needed again. The Island Princess carries 600 passengers and a crew of 300. The staff is comprised of many nationalities: British, Italian, Filipino, Portuguese, and American. Maintaining a great ocean liner requires many different skills. Engine workers, safety engineers, manifest officers, provisioning agents are all a part of the onboard team that keeps a great liner afloat. A ship is really a floating hotel, requiring the same personnel that you would find in a fine resort. Shore excursions are a part of any cruise. Dennis Daughters is the shore excursion manager and will oversee dozens of different excursions for the passengers. The photo shop is a part of any ship at sea. Onboard photographers take hundreds of photographs of passengers both on and off the ship. Within a few hours, the photographs are on display. Ships also offer shopping on board. International law allows duty-free shopping while the ship is at sea, and ships offer an interesting array of merchandise. The Island Princess offers a wide variety of cabins. The cabin that you see here is a typical medium-grade cabin designed for efficient use by travelers at sea. A daily newspaper, the Satellite World News, will keep you in touch with current events. But some of the real magic of any cruise happens in the galleys below. Executive Chef Pietro Ruffo is a veteran of great ships and is a master of preparing lavish meals. The Island Princess prides itself on fine continental cuisine. The staff is from Italy, and their talented skills make for fine dining. Everything must be prepared on board. Fresh bread is baked daily, and pastry workers prepare desserts that would delight a king. Of all of the dishes and meals prepared at sea, nothing rivals the desserts. Here in the pastry kitchen, chefs can produce anything your heart desires. Cakes, pies, torts, puffs, and creams come out of the ovens each day. Personally inscribed cakes are prepared for passengers celebrating birthdays and anniversaries. One of the real treats of our week at sea comes on our 5th day out, when the galley staff sets up the gala deck buffet. Today, as we sail across the Gulf of Alaska, lunch is served on the open decks under clear blue skies. The main courses and side dishes are really only an excuse, a momentary diversion, for the real reason for showing up here, the dessert buffet. A spectacle worthy of a dieter's worst nightmare is a table laid out with the most incredible array of calorie-laden joy anyone could possibly imagine. There is so much activity and milling around, you can discreetly make a half a dozen passes through. No one will notice except the staff who, like diet saboteurs, eagerly encourage you to do just that. In the evening, Captain Sample will greet passengers, introduce the senior officers, and brief us on our journey through the waters of College Fjord tomorrow. And after the captain's cocktail party, passengers begin their night at sea. The dining room opens for dinner after dark, and elegantly attired passengers enjoy wonderfully leisurely dinners at sea. After dinner, passengers can participate in a wide variety of activities. Some will head to the casino to try their luck. The ship offers roulette, blackjack, dice, and slot machines. And if you have the common sense not to lose too much, or the brilliance to quit while you're ahead, it can be fun and a part of the entertainment at sea. The following morning is our 6th day out. The Island Princess is completing her journey across the Gulf of Alaska, and will soon begin one of the most interesting experiences offered by the Alaska cruise, sailing through College Fjord. Tucked into the south-central coast of Alaska, College Fjord is a part of Prince William Sound, an ecologically sensitive area brought to public attention by the Exxon Valdez oil spill. Today, nature has healed most of those wounds, and few signs of those fateful days remain. The public furor that the spill aroused becomes more understandable as you sail up this sound. This is one of the most spectacular pageants of glacial ice anywhere on Earth. Dozens of glaciers tumble down into the sea. Each is named for a famous institution of higher learning, thus the name College Fjord. The size and scope of this land is almost beyond comprehension. Ice millions of years old, retreating, advancing, slowly shaping and reforming the face of the Earth. Our ship sails up to the very face of Harvard Glacier. We lie off of the ice, waiting quietly for nature to perform. We listen for the sound of the creaking ice, then glance to the left and right quickly, so that our eyes can catch the sight of the ice calving into the sea. From College Fjord, we sail west to the port of Whittier. Whittier is located on the eastern side of the Kenai Peninsula. Here we disembark, say goodbye to the staff, and proceed across the pier to the cruise train. Though located only 60 miles from Anchorage, Whittier is separated from the city by a mountain range. As a result, there is no road, only a tunnel through the mountains, built for the train. Passengers get on board, sit back and relax as they catch their first glimpse of the panorama that the interior of the state provides. Anchorage is located at the end of the Cook Inlet, first discovered by Captain Cook. It is the largest center of population in the state. Anchorage's history is brief. In 1915, it was nothing but an assortment of tents for the workers building the Alaskan Railroad. When the railroad was completed in 1923, Anchorage had a population of 2,000. By 1950, military operations had enlarged the population to 43,000. Today, its population hovers around 200,000, about half of the population of the entire state. It's a busy city built on the fortunes of oil, agriculture, military, and government offices, and in the summer, it is surprisingly warm. But few aspects will surprise the visitor more than the fact that Anchorage is one of the garden cities of America. In July and August, Anchorage has more beautiful flowers in a rainbow of colors than almost any other city on the continent. Long summer days, when the sun never sets, provide a growing environment ideal for spectacular blooms. One of Alaska's most interesting regions lies just outside Anchorage, 40 miles north, the Matanuska Valley. This is the center of Alaska's greatest agricultural region. It is picturesque, almost like a Norman Rockwell painting. And were it not for the towering snow-capped mountains covered with glacial ice, this could be anywhere in any Midwestern state. In fact, it was people from the Midwest who developed this land. Originally, the valley was homesteaded in the early 1900s, mostly by miners who stayed after the gold rush had passed. But the valley didn't really boom until 1935, when the federal government brought 200 families from the upper Midwest in an attempt to offer a helping hand to Depression-era farmers who were losing their land in the lower 48. The new settlers established an agricultural colony in the Matanuska Valley, and today most of the residents are descendants of those who originally farmed this land. The Matanuska Valley has always been renowned for its vegetable farms. Long, light-filled summer days produce crops that are the envy of any gardener. The livestock includes some curious breeds. At one time, musk ox roamed the Alaskan range, but hunting almost made them extinct. In 1930, a herd was imported from Greenland. The wool of the musk ox, known as kiviat, is luxurious and highly prized. Today it is shipped to outlying Alaskan villages where native Alaskans weave the wool. The center of the Matanuska Valley is the town of Palmer. During the last week of August each year, Palmer comes alive with the opening of the Alaska State Fair. Here you can see a side of Alaska visitors rarely glimpse, local people enjoying themselves at a traditional event. There are carnival rides, games, and entertainment for young and old alike. There is a simplicity about life here, far removed from the hectic pace of the urban world. Here you see the true Alaska, its rural farm heritage and country charm. .4-H clubs are active, and animal barns show off the members' entries in the livestock competitions. Young boys and girls put up carefully made displays that their charges sometimes try to destroy. In addition to the livestock competition, farmers from throughout the state display their prize-winning crops. If you enter crops in these contests, they'd better be big. Big as the yardstick for all Alaskan produce. Alaska's giant cabbages are the stars of the fair. It was the stories of 50-pound cabbages that the government used during the Depression to encourage the Midwestern farmers to move north. This state fair winner broke all records, 76.5 pounds. You could probably make enough coleslaw from this one cabbage to feed a baseball team for a week. Alaskans love sports, and the isolation makes for some imaginative ideas. Thoroughbred horse racing is considered a little too elite up this way, so Alaskans make do with one of nature's least appreciated creatures, the racing pig. There is a sense of anticipation in the crowd. The excitement builds as the pigs are brought out of their stalls, draped in their colors, and mustered at the starting gate. The gun sounds and they're off. The favorite, Piggy Went to Market, is coming up fast on the inside. The flag is down and the winner is Piggy Went to Market, paying 2-to-1, the currency here being Oreo cookies paid out to the pig. We're now ready for the second heat. This time the challenger is Bacon Bits. And off they go again. This is not an event you're too likely to see soon in your own hometown, but it is guaranteed to bring a smile, a laugh, or a grin here at the Alaska State Fair. From Palmer, we return to Anchorage, pack our bags, and head to the depot to board the Midnight Sun Express. Each summer, between Anchorage and Fairbanks, the Alaska Railroad hauls on the end of its yellow passenger train luxurious double-decker dome cars. They were built by Princess Tours for passengers from their ships. The rail line actually begins in Seward to the south on the Kenai Peninsula and ends 500 miles to the north in Fairbanks. The story of its construction also reflects Alaska's early days. The railroad was a project of the U.S. government. In 1915, Congress authorized the president to build a railroad in Alaska in order to exploit the gold. Completed in 1923, it has been one of the transportation backbones of the state ever since. Today, the railroad's passenger service is booming. In summer, the Midnight Sun Express runs daily between Anchorage and Fairbanks. We also enjoy fine dining aboard the train. The Midnight Sun Express prides itself on having one of the finest railroad galley staffs in the world. As the train gently rocks back and forth along the tracks, the kitchen staff prepares wonderful meals, comparable to those served at sea. Working in the galley of this train, as well as serving in the dining car, requires a fine sense of balance. Because for all of the breathtaking beauty passing by, the tracks are a bit rough. The line hauls freight and passengers on the same rails. And this, coupled with the winter climate and summer heat, means that the Alaska Railroad must work constantly to keep the tracks smooth. But despite the occasional jolt, no one would complain, because this is one of the most spectacularly beautiful rail trips in the world. Rugged wilderness scenery, coupled with elegant luxury travel, make for a journey we don't soon forget. The food is excellent, the wine superb, the service gracious, and the whole experience relaxing as the scenery rolls by. From Anchorage, we have now moved into the center of the state. Fairbanks, Alaska's second largest city, has a population of just over 25,000. Fairbanks may be small, but it is the headquarters for much of the vast interior of the state. In the center of town stands a monument to the people of the North, Alaska's native population. the rugged men and women who have lived in this land for a very long time. Today, Fairbanks seems like a sleepy Midwestern town. Here in the center of Alaska, several native corporations manage the assets they have acquired in recent years. Sam Dementoff is one of the administrators at Doyon Limited, one of the native corporations created in 1971 as a part of the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. This was an attempt on the part of the federal government to acknowledge that the people native to the state had legitimate claims on much of the land, its resources, and potential wealth. The result was the allocation of 44 million acres of Alaska's land to 13 corporations and the distribution of stock to every native Alaskan born here before 1971. Throughout central Alaska, men and women can be seen carrying on a variety of crafts. The materials used reflect the land. Figures and forms carved out of soapstone tell of Alaskan life. Each summer, the state government distributes the green serpentine stone to outlying villages, where artisans create saleable pieces. Finished goods are sent to stores in Anchorage to help support a way of village life that continues in the remote wilderness regions of Alaska today. Other crafts, such as scrimshaw carved from walrus tusks, also continue as older people hand down the traditions and heritage to younger men and women. Only native Alaskans are allowed to take the walrus tusks and carve them in the traditional way. Alaskans were always considered very social people, and dances were always a part of Alaskan life. Alaska's natives are divided into three distinctly different groups: Indians, Eskimos, and Aleuts. The Indians of Alaska comprise several tribes. Perhaps the best known are the Tlinkits of the southeast and the Athabascans of the interior. The people of the islands and the peninsula are the Aleuts, a seafaring people skilled in fishing and whaling. The Eskimos are the people of the north, the Bering Sea and the Arctic Ocean. Eskimos, numbering about 40,000, account for half the native population of the state. Games were also a part of native life, and those games reflect the skills needed and acquired to survive in this remote and wild land. Today, young Alaskans continue to play the same games in the form of organized competitions. And each summer, the best will compete in the World Eskimo Indian Olympics, a celebration held in Fairbanks each July. To compete, the contestant must be at least 1/4 native Indian, Aleut, or Eskimo. The competition involves 25 different events: the arm pull, the stick pull, the 1-foot high kick, the 2-foot high kick, and other interesting feats. Proud young men and women continue these traditions of their ancestors by participating in this annual event, a highlight of summer in the central part of the state. Higher education is important in Alaska, and the University of Alaska at Fairbanks is the principal center of study in the state. The university's main fields of study reflect the contemporary needs of Alaska. Agriculture is emphasized, and the experimental farm is one place where new ideas are tried and perfected. Crops are raised and hybrids devised to maximize the growing conditions peculiar to Alaska. Extremely variable light, dark in winter, long days in summer, coupled with a climate that ranges from sub-zero cold to days in summer that can top 100 degrees, make for growing conditions that can be manipulated to produce some spectacular crops and blooms. The University of Alaska is also a center for scientific studies. And the best-known part of the science department is the seismology lab. Alaska is a land of earthquakes. The remote nature of much of the state makes many of the tremors non-threatening to people, but monitoring them is still a full-time job. Dr. John Davies, a research seismologist, monitors plate movement over the entire Pacific Rim. Alaska's most destructive quake occurred on Good Friday, 1964. The quake registered 8.6, the strongest ever recorded in North America and one of the greatest quakes of all time. It generated 5 times the energy of the 1906 San Francisco quake, but it struck at 5:36 p.m. after schools and stores were closed, and loss of life was relatively low. But of all of these stories to come out of Alaska, none will match the stories of gold. We're going to get our own chance to pan for gold at the Little El Dorado mine outside of Fairbanks. Andy and Pam Westcott, who operate this mine, haul us back into the hills on their own hand-laid railroad. The couple put in the tracks, built the engine, and staked the claim on the mine. Gold was first discovered in Alaska in 1848. Today, most of the mines have given out, and no one is sure just how much gold is left in the state. But Andy and Pam, with the help of the visitors who make this trek, still pull a modest amount of gold out of the hills. This is not lode gold, but placer gold, gold left by Mother Nature as debris in the land. You get at the gold by first running earth through a sluice. Since gold is heavy, it will settle to the bottom of the sluice through a series of filtering operations. Andy takes time to talk about this work, answer questions, explain the process of filing a claim, and tell stories of the gold rush days. With the heavy rock and clay removed, Andy shows you how to take a handful of the muddy muck and coax a few slivers of gold from the pan. It's a slow process of gradually washing off the top and allowing the gold to settle to the bottom. If you're patient, you will almost always find a bit of gold at the bottom of the pan. In the quest to reach the Klondike, thousands climbed the Chilkoot Trail and the White Pass Trail and rafted down the Yukon River. Others traveled north by steamer and boarded paddle boats on the Yukon that would take them back into the Klondike, hopefully before the river froze. Today at Fairbanks, the Riverboat Discovery lets you experience some of the feelings of those who took this route. Our journey begins on the Chena River, and we head downstream to the Nenana. At the junction of the two rivers, we see a curious sight, the wetting of the waters. This eerie, bubbling cloud is actually the joining of the clear waters of the Chena with the silt-laden stream of the Nenana. The lava-like mass is the fine powder-like silt from glacial rocks eroded over millions of years. Once on the Nenana River, our boat picks up speed as we head downstream on the swift-moving current. The water is chalky gray, the silt so thick it looks almost like wet cement. Captain Jim Binkley is one of 3 generations of the Binkley family who work on board this boat. This is a true family affair. The Binkleys really do make everyone feel at home. They are dedicated Alaskans, determined to have you enjoy their state. Fish wheels along the banks catch the spawning salmon by using the forces of nature. The current keeps the wheel turning while the scoops trap the salmon heading upstream. A ride on the Discovery is one of the highlights of Fairbanks, a bit different from the island princes awaiting us back at sea. We have traveled north halfway through the state, first by ship, then by train. Now the rugged wilderness of the tundra, the Brooks Range, and the land above the Arctic Circle awaits. This journey north, almost to the top of the world, will be made by motor coach. We will travel 415 miles north on the Dalton Highway to Prudhoe Bay. This is a restricted road, all gravel, no services, a truly desolate trail. It is the Haul Road, and it was built in 1974 to move goods and men north so that the Trans-Alaska Pipeline could be built. Each year, a selected number of travelers journey north on the Dalton Highway for a summer adventure in the Arctic. We cross the Arctic Circle 175 miles north of Fairbanks. The coach stops here, and each passenger can pose for a picture and then receive a certificate to prove that he or she has traveled above the 66th parallel, where the Arctic begins. From here, the coach continues north to the panoramic Brooks Range. The Haul Road parallels Alaska's biggest project, the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. Few undertakings have created as much controversy as the building of this 815-mile-long pipeline from the Arctic Ocean to the port of Valdez. The story of its construction is amazing, its cost mind-boggling, its impact almost beyond measure. The pipeline opened up the state of Alaska economically. It provided another boom time for thousands who headed north to do the work. It was also the source of great ecological controversy over its potential disruption of wildlife migration. In some areas, the 48-inch pipeline was laid above ground, in others below. The above-ground sections were built over the vast stretches of permafrost. Heavy semi-tractor trailer rigs on the Haul Road move goods and supplies to and from the North Slope oil fields. About halfway along the road, we come to Coldfoot, which claims to be the northernmost truck stop in the world. Here the rigs pull in, everyone stops. It is the only service spot on the entire road. The rigs refuel, the drivers grab a bite, and the coach passengers spend the night in a basic, simple motel. And if you have trouble sleeping, why not go sightseeing out over the Brooks Range? Gary Smith is going to take us up in his single-engine plane on an amazing excursion. The scenery is beautiful. The Brooks Range is bleak, serene, and still covered in snow. But the most amazing feature of this ride is the time. It is the summer solstice, June 22nd, and we are soaring out over the Brooks Range at midnight, here in the land of the midnight sun. Our coach continues north through the range the following morning. The driver offers a running commentary as he tells us about the wildlife in the region and keeps an eye peeled so that he can point out animals as we pass them along the way. As we climb over the pass, passengers peer out of the windows and appreciate the grandeur of the scene. After descending the north slope of the Brooks Range, we start out across the vast tundra of Alaska. For the next 150 miles, all the way to the Arctic Ocean, we will not see another tree. The land is flat, mushy, bleak, but under the featureless land and out under the sea lies oil, the new gold of Alaska, and the reason this road was built. The gravel highway is maintained throughout the year. Even in the pitch-black dead of winter, goods are hauled north on this road to the settlements on Prudhoe Bay. Though workers fly in and out in work shifts, Most supplies are brought in by truck. In Alaska, the cost of everything, from an orange to a nail, is raised to cover the expense of moving things so far. We have come as far as we can go. We are on the Arctic Ocean at Prudhoe Bay. We are going to the hamlet of Deadhorse, constructed to house the workers who manage the vast oil fields. The icy waters of the Arctic Ocean lap the shore. In winter, the waters will be frozen solid almost to the North Pole. The next stop would be the polar ice cap. There is no more land on this side of the world. The rig stands silently on the horizon, pumping oil from under the North Slope. The men are housed in basic dorms, and they work long hours. They spend their free time in the gyms, watch a little video, read and sleep. They come to the fields and work for several weeks and are then flown back to Anchorage. It's hard work. The reward is very good pay and a lot of time off. This is where the pipeline begins. Mile 0, where the oil begins its journey south. From this point, the oil flows across the state to the port of Valdez, where tankers transport the oil to countries around the globe. The Trans-Alaska Pipeline is the single most important component in the economic lifeblood of the state. From Prudhoe Bay, we return to Fairbanks, where we reboard the train south en route to our rendezvous with the Island Princes in 5 days' time. The scenery rolls by as we make our way downstate and once again enjoy the luxury and comfort of the Midnight Sun Express. But before returning to Anchorage, we stop for 2 days to explore Alaska's most visited attraction, Denali National Park. Located midway between Fairbanks and Anchorage, Denali is one of America's most spectacular attractions. The Midnight Sun Express arrives from Fairbanks early in the afternoon. It pulls into the small station, and we leave the train and make our way to Harper Lodge. Few wilderness areas have survived so untouched and yet so accessible. Denali National Park is one of America's best examples of how to offer thrilling experiences for travelers and yet leave the natural environment virtually untouched. Here you find no paved roads, only one lone gravel trail stretches into the park. There are few private cars. Visitors go in and out on a system of park-operated buses. Only limited camping is allowed. Hotels are few, and there is no nightlife, no entertainment. Just the thrill of the wild, nature at its very best. Harper Lodge is a rustic resort set just outside the park, high above the Nenana River below. Here it is early to bed and early to rise, because the real thrill of Denali is seeing the spectacle of wildlife roaming freely throughout the park. To catch the action, the buses load up at 6 a.m. and head out. Animals keep different hours than humans. They nap midday and are most active just after dawn. Throughout the park, great creatures, large and small, roam undisturbed by man. The Alaskan moose is one of the largest creatures of the continent. His antlers can reach 6 feet in width. Caribou migrate throughout the state in impressive herds. Dall sheep live on the steepest slopes of the range. Here, we are observers of, not participants in, the passing scene. Of all of Denali's experiences, perhaps the most amazing is coming upon a grizzly bear. They roam throughout the state and are highly concentrated here in the park. They are beautiful and impressive, but also dangerous, and visitors must keep a healthy distance downwind. But not all of the animals are wild, and no animal figures as large in the history of Alaska and mankind as the dog. Here at Denali, park rangers train the renowned Alaskan sled dogs. This breeding is done for strength and endurance, not for pedigree. In fact, by American Kennel Club standards, all would be considered mutts. It was the dogs of Alaska that helped to open this land. Until bush pilots began to fly out over the state in the 1920s, dog sleds were virtually the only way to travel any distance at all. Denali also offers travelers the challenge of whitewater rafting. Visitors don yellow life jackets and climb into rubber rafts for an exciting ride down the Nenana River. The raft runners are all very experienced and give a brief safety talk before the beginning of each trip, complete with instructions on how to pull your mate back into the raft if he or she happens to bounce out. So with everyone suitably warned, the rafts set off in tandem down this lively mountain stream. The one thing you can't bring along is your camera, not because you might lose it, but so that you won't ruin your equipment. The Nenana, as we saw in Fairbanks, is filled with glacial silt. It is as fine as flour. If your camera gets wet, and trust me it will, everything gets wet. The fine silt will seep through the case and destroy your lens and shutter. So no pictures underway. Just hold on tight and let the river take you along. Denali means the Great One, and this is the Great One, Mount McKinley, named after President McKinley in 1896. It is the highest mountain in North America at 20,306 feet, and one of the highest mountains in the world. Each year, tens of thousands of visitors stand at its base, awed by its colossal size. But for a special few, the experience is heightened by the thrill of a plane trip to the peak. Moments after takeoff, we are soaring high above the majestic beauty of the mighty Alaska Range. This colossus of nature, created by the shifting continental plates, dominates the state. On a clear day, the range is visible from Anchorage, 150 miles away. It is snow-covered year-round. The mountain is so huge that it creates its own weather. Even if it is pouring rain at the lodge, above the clouds, the mountains soar into the clear blue skies. At noon the following day, we returned to the railroad station at Denali to reboard the Midnight Sun Express. we're going back to Anchorage, where we will spend the night. The Alaskan range grows smaller as we travel south on the chattering rails. Viewing the scenery from the dome cars offers a level of comfort and luxury the early pioneers could never have imagined. The following day, we will depart for Whittier. The Island Princess will sail at midnight, so we have the day to ourselves. Many will wait in Anchorage and board the late afternoon cruise train, but others choose a curious side trip. Sparkling in the sun are the waters of Portage, a town that no longer exists. It was leveled by the earthquake on Good Friday in 1964. But the Alaska Railroad still stops here. There are no passenger accommodations, just freight and flatbed cars. We have come here on a coach chartered by Alaska Sightseeing Tours. Our driver will pull the coach onto a flat car, carefully watching side to side. This is not as easy as it looks. Other cars and trucks drive on as well. This railroad is the only way to get to Whittier on the other side of the range. Alaska is America's largest state, and yet next to Hawaii has the fewest roads. This train will take us and our coach to the Whittier dock in the early morning hours, long before the Island Princess arrives. We are arriving early to board the Glacial Seas, a 60-foot private excursion yacht that is going to take us where the big ships can't, through the iceberg-packed waters to the face of the massive Columbia Glacier. Columbia Glacier is the crown jewel of Prince William Sound. It is only one of 20 in the Sound, but its size is massive. It is the largest tidewater glacier in North America. Though the Island Princess and other large ships will sail by Columbia Glacier, the waters are so choked with ice that it is not safe for them to go in close. Small vessels, such as the Glacial Seas, can dodge and maneuver around all of this natural debris and go up almost to the face. The captain of our yacht keeps an eye on the instruments that will ensure safe passage through the Sound, while the navigator constantly scans the sea for ice. The calving of ice into the Sound is continuous and unpredictable. It is visually one of the most impressive sights of the world. As we wander through the narrow lanes of ice, we hear the thundering sound of ice slabs breaking free from the towering wall as nature moves forward, carving and shaping the earth. From Columbia Glacier, we return to Whittier. The sun has set, and we reboard and prepare to sail. We have been all the way to the Arctic. We have seen the Earth and the ocean in panoramic form, and we have experienced the world in a way that only Alaska can provide. The Great Alaska Cruise is one of the world's most memorable travel experiences, enjoyed each year by thousands of people who sail north on great ships like the Island Princess to Alaska, America's Northern Star.